Rosie Batty has been in the spotlight, bringing awareness to domestic and family violence after her son Luke was murdered by his father. May is National Domestic and Family Violence Prevention Month, and today Rosie is on the Gold Coast to be the keynote speaker at the Friends with Dignity High Tea. Good morning, Rosie.
Good morning, Julie.
Thank you very much for your time. I know you've got a very busy day ahead of you. Rosie, 4 years on from Luke's murder, how are you?
Well, it's a journey that doesn't end, and I think that I've arrived at the place where I realise that by immersing myself and perhaps distracting myself by working so hard, eventually takes its toll on you. And I think over the last few months, I've really had to sit deeply with my feelings of grief, and it's not easy. It's not easy at all. But we do. I'm so thankful for the wonderful people that, whether I'm in an airport or wherever I may be, that will come to me and say, "I think you're wonderful," and they mention Luke, and it hurts and it's grief, but it becomes something that you realise that you have to understand that grief won't leave you, but it doesn't necessarily drag you down into such depths as you continue to move on in your life.
Rosie, for many of us, our first introduction to you was seeing you speak really just so calmly after your son Luke's murder, clearly in grief and grief-stricken, but this amazing calm and poise when you spoke. Where did that courage come from to speak so soon after Luke's murder?
Look, it's a question that has been asked of me constantly, and I don't think I've got the answers other than, when something like that happens to you, you are in shock, and your body is obviously not shut down, but you're certainly not able to take in the enormity of what's happened. And so I think also that, the kind of person you've always been is what potentially takes over. And I lost my mum when I was 6, and I think that shock of overnight losing my mum, somehow I've known what I need to do to keep surviving, because I've always had to work with those feelings, and that's, and look, I've had a wonderful grandmother who lived till she was 100, and my father and our family, we're stoic, and I guess that's that British thing, isn't it, where you push and suppress your feelings and you just push forward. And I'm not sure that it's right for everybody, and I don't know that suppressing emotions is right, but I do think that whatever I did that day has made such a difference for other victims of family violence and the whole family violence movement of workers and organisations who've been struggling for decades to get this epidemic that we have heard and acknowledged in our society. So whatever came across me that day, and some people may have spiritual insights or whatever it was just something that came out of my mouth, and I was able to frame the situation without blame, without bitterness and anger, and put it out there for what it was, that no matter who you are, no matter what house you live in, how intelligent, family violence can reach you anywhere you are. And I think that how I was managed to, I didn't think about what I was going to say. I hadn't planned what I was going to say. I certainly didn't have a script. But that message, I still talk about the same things, pushing the same messages, because, all of us need to understand that violence or tragedy, it's people like us that it happens to, not everyone else. And so, that's really the same messages that I still kind of try to convey.
It's 8 to 9 on 91.7 ABC Gold Coast. I'm speaking with Rosie Batty, former Australian of the Year. She's on the Gold Coast today to be the keynote speaker at the Friends with Dignity High Tea. May is National Domestic and Family Violence Prevention Month. Rosie, you spoke there of what you have done over those 4 years, which is push and bring that message wherever you were given a platform. You've taken that message. What have you seen change in that time, Rosie? What is now different about the conversation that we're having regarding family and domestic violence?
Look, I think we've now, on the momentum has gathered. There is definitely conversation. There are conversations happening where there's never been conversations before. We're starting to see it. Certainly in Victoria, the Victorian government have got enormous reform happening because as a result of the 227 recommendations from the Royal Commission into Family Violence. In Queensland, your Queensland government, have been doing an awful lot of work too. We're starting to see, particularly overwhelmingly in Victorian state schools, the introduction of respectful relationships and that whole of school community approach. So it's all starting to gain traction. And I'm very lucky that as I continue to speak and to meet with people, they continue to convey what they have been implementing or doing in either their workplace. We have a lot of organisations now with paid leave entitlement for those victims who may need to go to court or find somewhere else to live or, take time to make police reports. So we've got a huge awareness within corporate Australia and service organisations who are really starting to understand the implications of if it's 1 in 3 women affected by violence, that means that a lot of our workplace employees are affected. And so we're now starting to really understand that we need to acknowledge there has to be intervention and programs and accountability for those who choose to perpetrate violence. So we're starting to wake up to the fact that I believe we have victim blamed always by expecting those experiencing violence to flee, to protect themselves. But we're now starting to see police response, which are more better trained with their understanding and appreciation of the complexities of family violence. And we're starting to see that perpetrator accountability happen. So there is a lot of change happening, but what overwhelms me is obviously when I still see every time I switch on the news, I see another woman who's been murdered or another family that's been killed, and you realise that it will be a long time before the work that we're doing in challenging attitudes and raising awareness to actually see that reflected in the statistics and the fatalities. So this is a long journey, and change is glacially slow. And so, I look at other ways that we've changed our attitudes, and in relation to, things like anti-smoking campaigns, I can see in my lifetime what a change of attitude in relation to smoking we all have now. And so I think we've just got to keep understanding that every time we call it out and every time we make someone accountable and every time we say, that's not good enough, I will not accept that, and hold our friends and family accountable too, the change is happening. Because decades ago, your grandmother and those women that went before had no help, nowhere to go. So as women now and as victims, we're beginning to understand there is no shame that we need to wear. The shame is on the perpetrator of that violence. So these are the changes, I think.
Whereas you mentioned earlier that it has been a gruelling time for you in the public eye. You've stepped away from the Luke Batty Foundation in February this year. What's next for you then, Rosie?
Well, that's a very good point because, I can't bring Luke back, and it's that deep realisation that my life can never go back to what it was. With the level of public recognition I have, it's difficult for me to go back to, and it's kind of the life I perhaps would have been having if I hadn't decided to be so public and campaign. And I want to be able to work out how can I balance myself in a way that doesn't exhaust me and keep me being vital, speaking out for victims of family violence, and particularly the children, little boys, little girls, children, powerless and impacted for the rest of their lives. So I've been doing work with the Victorian government, and I'm still doing work with an organisation called I Watch in relation to respectful relationships in schools. I'm still doing speaking engagements where I believe that they have impact. So it's really about trying to have a better balance as I continue to select where I can still have impact and still continue to be a beacon of strength for those who need to have that vision so that they can continue to pull through the challenges in their life. So, I am really evaluating. I'm taking courses and I'm really trying to, I guess, professionally develop as well in areas that I think I have, certainly would have benefited from having some professional experience or skills or qualifications in certain areas. And so I'll continue to try to, evolve, I guess, and take time to enjoy family and friends and long walks and holidays,
Sounds
trekking.
lovely, Rosie.
But so, like everybody else, I still need to earn an income. I can't bask in idleness, but it's really making sure that I'm authentic and still doing what I know is important.
Rosie, the news is upon us, so I'm going to have to end our conversation there. It's been wonderful speaking with you this morning. You're an inspiring woman, a courageous woman, and best of luck finding that balance in your life and enjoying those lovely beach walks. Thank you, Rosie Batty.
Thank you, Julie.
Wow, what a woman.